Hey, it's Drybear. And we need to talk about what's been going on with World of Warcraft Dragonflight, where barely at the end of week 1, we haven't even had a reset yet for the clears in PvE and PvP for Season 3, 10.2, Week 1. But there's already a lot going on with World of Warcraft. On top of hot fixes, Race to World First progress, there's also a 10.2.5 PTR already up and running that you can check all the new changes on that's coming to the game. The first big change to talk about is Dragon Riding is getting a rename to Dynamic Flight. And because Dragon Riding had such a big success and it was well received by everyone in Dragonflight, it is now being extended to all of Azeroth, which means you can dynamically fly anywhere in the world as of 10.2.5, the next major content update coming to the game, which I think is awesome because once you get used to dragon riding or dynamic flying, whatever you want to call it, you can actually just start moving through the world at a very natural pace, and those extra glyphs tend to make a big deal for you as you move into new areas. On top of that, they're going to let Drakthir use their dynamic flying with soar in Dragon Isles and Azeroth. So they're actually allowing the Drakthir to dragon ride on their own with their unique racial ability anywhere in the world, which is what we wanted originally, and we're finally getting it. Now, one downside with this change is they are reducing the maximum speed that you can reach in Azeroth versus the normal in Dragon Isles. They mentioned that they don't like the fact that it might reduce travel by too much in the open world. I think this is kind of a weird reason to put on it and to reduce it, as it's just kind of, I don't know, I feel like the time burners that exist in MMOs just need to go by the wayside. Add more activities, add more content, but don't try to eat up our time with traveling and managing and things like that. But all that said, currently on the 10.2.5, you can only reach about 80% of the maximum speed with dragon riding in Azeroth than you can in directly the Dragon Isles. Next, they will be adding in AI or bots for dungeon runs. This is something that has been implemented into Final Fantasy XIV for the last 2 major expansions. I believe it went live in Shadowbringers, but it's something that's been quite effective. Now, it is something that works great for Final Fantasy XIV because they have such a major focus on the main campaign, the main story that has to be done in order for you to unlock all of the content. You can't do the dungeons, you can't queue for the dungeons, you can't even do the raids or the trials if you haven't done the main story. And so it's very nice to be able to go and queue up with a full bot party without needing other players online or waiting in queue in order to clear that dungeon and get that content done. So World of Warcraft is learning from this success and implementing it into WoW as well, but with some limitations. It's not going to be used for Mythic Plus. You're not going to be doing difficult content for it, but it looks like they're going to start by allowing you to queue up solo if you want, or any number of people in your party, to a group of 5 that autofills with bots and helps you clear normal and possibly even heroic dungeons just to get that loot there. Now, it's not going to get you any crazy loot. You're not going to do mythics and stuff, but it will allow you to get starter gear that gets you into the tier, that allows you to actually get into the process of gearing with other players. And if you just want to hang out and take the dungeon at your pace, it's the first time you've done the dungeon, you want to explore it, you actually have options for how the bots behave once you're inside. Namely, you can tell the bots that you want to be led through the dungeon and they will take charge, especially if the tank is a bot as well. They know the route through the dungeon and they'll just start going and you can follow along depending on what your role is. Or you can tell the bots that you want to lead. You want to explore the dungeon, they'll just follow you and help you kill things, which is great because you can essentially just start a dungeon, get some progress done, someone calls you or someone wants to get your attention, you can stand up from the computer, the bots will just stand by you and protect you, and then you can come back and finish the rest of the dungeon because you're the only real player in there. You're not wasting anyone's time or burning up the clock because it's just you. So it's a cool system and I hope it gets expanded into further areas. I think it definitely does help with normal and heroics, and probably it would be nice too if it worked in things like Raid Finder, just to help people get into the tier when the queues start to slow down after the first couple weeks, when people stop needing that gear anymore and they're just going for transmogs and you just can't get into the game. One of the things that I don't like about the season is about halfway through the season, even like 5 to 8 weeks into the season, when you switch to an alt and you try to gear out an alt, all the lower content is just kind of barren. There's not that many people playing or queuing. It's hard to fill keys for people. Like if you're trying to do a Mythic Plus key to get gear, doing anything between +2 to +15 is actually kind of hard. By the halfway point of the season, everyone's just doing 18 to 25, and it's hard to find groups for that. So I think if they could find a way to get these bots to work in more content than just a normal dungeon, even just having normal and heroic would be really nice and would help people get into the tier. There's also a new zone that's kind of being teased in 10.2.5. It's an extension of the Mirdrasil outside of the Dream, which might bring new cosmetics or new world quests or things like that. So that's coming down the pipe. They're also expecting to rework a lot of the Covenant abilities that came from Shadowlands. If you look at a lot of the Covenant abilities that stayed from Shadowland, like Shifting Power or Convoke the Spirits or Primordial Wave, all of these were popular abilities that people liked and felt fit with the class when it came out of Shadowlands. And so Blizzard decided to keep them in the game and keep them along with the character. However, they're still thematically tied to the Covenants that they came from. And so in future updates, including 10.2.5, which I don't think they're going to hit all the abilities, but they do plan to get them all eventually, they're going to be re-theming those Covenant abilities that came over from Shadowlands to fit the class that they're on. Divine Toll, things like that, just making them fit the class and not be so starkly themed towards the Covenant that it came from. And part of me hopes that when they make this change, they also clean up some of the tagging that the abilities have. Personally, for me, if you use things like Primordial Wave on your Shaman and you're trying to use Click to Heal, you have to actually put parentheses Shadowlands next to it because there's a different trigger for it, the name of the actual spell. So I think there's hopefully some DB things that come cleaned up, like database cleanups that come along with this, but it's nice to see these being reworked and reshown in cool ways. Next, there are some nerfs and buffs, and this is not a complete list because obviously they're still waiting for the completion of Season 3, Week 1, Week 2, seeing where people get to and where the stats lie. But if you watched any of my my rankings videos, I covered healers, tanks, and DPS this week, going over where everyone sits. There were some outliers that were pretty obvious that needed adjustments, and one of them kind of stuck out. Overall, we had Beast Mastery Hunters sitting at the very top of the total DPS in all categories: Mythic Plus, Heroic Raid, and Mythic Raid. And this came from a hotfix that had been implemented into the game to make pet damage a little bit more viable. It comes off of weapon damage now instead of just a pet modifier that's there, which means that when they put this hotfix in, it made pets do a lot more damage for hunters, which brought Beast Mastery up to the very top of that ranking. And so what they plan to do is they like the fact that the weapon damage is applying to pets, and they like being able to gear up a BM hunter and make your pets equally strong based on how good your weapon is. It also has a side effect of being able to modify better with augmentation evokers, buffing your damage directly. So all this works, it just kind of overshot the mark. And so you can expect a nerf coming for Beast Mastery Hunter pet damage, but it's going to be keeping the huge buff that they got for scaling off of weapon damage. This change is in the PTR right now and not live. However, there was a hotfix that went live to bring some changes to classes that are already out. Guardian Druids got a rage increase with Mangle. Balance got a regeneration increase from Catform Energy as well. Same thing goes for Restoration Druid. Ret Paladins got an overall ability damage increase by 3%. Discipline Priests were doing insanely well and still are, so they got a nerf and a hotfix that's already in the live game. Divine Aegis absorption reduced to 5% of healing done, down from 10, so it's a 50% reduction, and Inescapable Torment damage reduced by approximately 19%. Destruction Warlock saw 5% damage increase on Shadowy Tear and Unstable Tear, and Chaos Tear got damage increased by 30% overall. And the Aberrus 2-set bonus in a couple cases got nerfed for it still being very strong, even though it's in Season 3 and it's an old tier set bonus. Specifically, Demonology got the cooldown reduction from the 2-set bonus, dropped from 1 second per hit to 0.5 seconds. 10.2.5 on PCR also brings new cosmetic options for Trolls and Draenei, as well as customizations for Warlock, Tyrant, and Darkglare. And that about covers up where we are with the changes on the PTR and the hotfixes for week number 1. And if you're following the Race to World, first we have 3 guilds at 7 out of 9 Mythic, but as we know from this raid specifically, the last 3 bosses are a order of magnitude harder than the first 6. So you see a lot of guilds actually at 6 out of 9. There's only 3, Echo, Liquid, and Method at 7 out of 9, and they're working really hard to get Tindral down. The best percentages is just sub 60% right now, and then you have to get the last 3 bosses down for Mythic. So it's a pretty close race as of right now. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.